Okay, I'm gonna consume probably in excess of 3,500 calories today. My daily limit is 1,800, so I'm gonna average that across 2 days by consuming 0 calories the next day. But once you start seeing it real life, real time, you start to understand, wow, the system is so responsive and there's so much change going on depending on different inputs. Family and friends are usually the people who would probably understand our urge for transformation and our health goals. Simply assigning a specific supplement to an individual is not enough. Sometimes the day is just not going anywhere, and sometimes you're just stuck. What you are responsible for is your own choices. There will be peaks and dips, but if you know that what you're doing is worthwhile and right, you can just transcend them. If somebody is unwilling to watch that, somebody dislikes that, that's their opinion. My message then is not for them. In this episode of Lifestyle Mix, we shall discuss 4 topics that both have relevance to my work with clients and also reflect my personal experience. We'll talk about CGM insights, about what I have experienced when I first started using the continuous glucose monitor, how to correctly supplement omega-3. We will also discuss if fasting following the day of suboptimal inappropriate eating is the best approach, and also how to deal with lack of enthusiasm, particularly for your long-term endeavors. And I hope that the take-homes from this video will help you in these aspects of your life. If you're not interested in a specific topic, just check the chapters below and fast forward to the one that you're interested in. So first off, let's start with CGM. So I've recently posted a video about metabolic health, and I've mentioned that the snapshot type approach, that is what we can offer the patients in conventional medicine, is not the optimal solution for long-term metabolic function assessment, control, and improvement. And we're best going with CGM, with something like Libre-3 or Dexcom, whatever sensor you choose, and find best suitable for your personal needs and budget. What I first found when I started using the Libre-3 was that you just get quite overwhelmed with the amount of information, which you actually cannot imagine. Even as an anaesthetist, I have managed the patients in different situations, and the most frequent glucose checks would probably be hourly or half-hourly for the patients who have the least optimal glycemic control. But once you start seeing it real life, real time, you start to understand, wow, the system is so responsive and there's so much change going on depending on different inputs that it just fascinates you. And sensor specifics aside, so we need to understand that the interstitial fluid glucose is slightly different from capillary blood glucose. So the sensor is sampling from interstitial fluid, which is between the cells, and that's why it's lagging usually by about 5 to 15 minutes. And sometimes when you are exercising or when you take a meal, then it may lag even more with the rapid changes of glucose. So the capillary, obviously, if you were to check it, would be more accurate. However, that's the best we can have for real-time management, so interstitial, miracle technology, excellent. And what I find important is not to get overwhelmed with all these numbers, but rather use them as insights into how your body responds to different inputs. Even if we're thinking responses to foods, you will see that they will vary significantly depending on type of carbohydrates, simple versus complex. Depending if you are actually taking that food after exercise, you will see a much less of a peak of glucose, probably, if you take food after exercise. You will also see that certain foods that are considered very healthy and good may actually cause a significant peak of glucose, and so your body specifically reacts to these foods in this way. So you need to make individualized changes to your dietary patterns on the basis of that information, or make changes to the combinations of foods that you take to achieve optimal balance. So a lot of insights from the eating side, but also you will see how sleeping poorly significantly worsens your glycemic control, how stress worsens your glycemic control, and even how elevation of cortisol levels in the early morning hours may give you that peak of glucose. I've even noticed that when I take a cold shower, several minutes exposure, I would see a peak in glucose. So it's a very insightful experience, and I personally found that fascinating. And once you learn to interpret these insights, and once you learn to use them, to adjust to them, then you get the best understanding of your body as this metabolic machine, and you get to fine-tune your metabolic function the best. So I strongly encourage you all to try CGM, and you can check the video on metabolic health for my suggestions on the average glucose, on the delta or standard deviation, on the peaks, and so on the postprandial elevations that I consider optimal. Now, the next topic is about omega-3 supplementation. And this has been triggered by a conversation with a client who had a chat with a nutritionist, and the nutritionist has advised him to take a specific amount of omega-3 supplement. Although I would suggest that omega-3 is probably worth supplementing in all individuals, because most of us don't consume enough fatty fish or oily fish rather, to actually ensure adequate omega-3 levels. And also those of us who are vegetarians and consume mainly ALA, the conversion is so variable, so we don't really know if we actually have adequate levels. And that's why I also think that simply assigning a specific supplement to an individual is not enough, and it's not the best approach we can foster. I rather advise everyone checking their omega-3 index and get the supplementation tailored to that. So if the index is less than 4%, then we're probably looking at the highest end of spectrum of the dose, like 3 to 4 grams a day. If the index is 4 to 8%, then we're probably looking somewhere between 2 and 3 grams. And once we've hit 8 and above, then we can probably go 1.5 to 2 grams long term, and rechecking the levels makes sense every 3 or 4 months, as soon as you can be sure that the old pool of red cells that has contained that previous concentrations of omega-3 has died off, and you've got the new red cells that you're actually investigating right now. Next topic, again triggered by the conversation with a client during the consultation a week ago. The client is very health conscious. What he has come across as a stumbling point are the restaurants. He's socializing with his friends, and they go to the restaurant, and he knows that he's very likely going to consume either poor food or he's going to overconsume calories. So he doesn't want to look awkward, he doesn't want to look odd or make people strain in his presence. So what he does is he's very mindful about what he's eating during the whole day prior to the restaurant visit. So he kind of reduces the calories and mainly peddles the protein, and then he goes to the restaurant, and the next day he takes a day of fasting. I would like to discuss now, is that approach, fasting the next day, the best in the situation, or there are some alternatives? Firstly, I'd like to say that I found that approach, and it's not an uncommon approach. I find it generally quite creative, and I'm very respectful towards people who are so much health conscious that they actually think, okay, I'm going to consume probably in excess of 3,500 calories today. So my daily limit is 1,800. So I'm going to average that across 2 days by consuming 0 calories the next day. But unfortunately, we stumble upon probably kind of 4 impacts in this situation. First is glycemic and insulin impacts, microbiome impacts, protein impact, and habit impact. Protein impact, in my reading, is one of the worst, because if you are someone who is undergoing body transformation, who's undergoing body recomposition, you're probably working out. So you need to have continuous supply of amino acids. Yes, there's no such thing as anabolic window. There is a 24-hour amino acid pool. So then if I consume, for example, 250 grams of protein today, and consume 0 tomorrow, does that equal to consuming 125, 125 on both days? That probably doesn't. So unfortunately, the next day, we're going to be protein deficient, particularly if we do a resistance training there. We're going to probably not get the optimal results. We're not going to build muscle as effectively as we could. So that's one of the downsides, and I think that is the more important downside than glucose, insulin, or microbiome implications, which are also quite important. And the fourth downside, by overeating or overindulging on one day and fasting on the other day, we kind of develop this acceleration-deceleration habit, being overindulgent or kind of cheater on one day and then ascetic on another day. Although I support the ascetic part of it, I think it's quite good to have that feature enabled, and it's useful at some points in life, but I think the overindulging and kind of cheating mentality is probably not the best. So I'd rather have a steady cruising across our calorie goals, across our body transformation, across our habit change, rather than subject my brain and body to the peaks and dips. So what answer did I give to that client? I suggested to that client to pay attention to his own goals. Yes, indeed, we're socializing with family and friends, but the family and friends are usually the people who would probably understand our urge for transformation and our health goals. And probably these would be the best people and the people who would find it the easiest to understand why are we behaving in a specific way and why at the restaurant we custom order a salad with no dressing or lean meat or whatever. I personally think that it's worth a try to actually behave in the way you consider the best for your health in the presence of your family and friends. And that could also act as a nice indicator of how supportive they are of your ideas of transformation. And ultimately, what you are responsible for is your own choices. So the opinion of the closest friends should not extend and intrude your personal space to that degree that you actually dissolve your own decisions and you actually act the way they would like you to act rather than what you have chosen to do. And on this note, I'd like to raise the fourth topic of how to deal with lack of enthusiasm and failures. Again, this is a reflection on both what I hear from the clients and on my personal experience. Sometimes the day is just not going anywhere, and sometimes you're just stuck. There may be different reasons for that. There may be overtraining, lack of sleep, excessive stress, and just generally cumulative fatigue and everything across the time. What I find useful as a quick fix is 3 main tools. Firstly is having some sleep. You may be very surprised, or probably have experienced that already, that you're totally shattered, you totally have no enthusiasm, you don't want to do anything, you go have some sleep, wake up, and suddenly the life has completely different colors. So it's a very profound and very effective tool. Secondly, go for a walk in nature. Get yourself the space, get the eyes to see the breadth and the width and the depth and the sun and everything. And ideally, you can do it solo, and that's really good, and sometimes it's worthwhile for reflection and stuff. But also you can do that with your family and friends, provided you have really good relationship. And you can both fulfill your kind of moving, your aerobic tasks, and you can also have the social connection domain covered. And thirdly, go exercise. And I specifically find both training and aerobic exercise worthwhile. Both of them would ramp up your BDNF, would ramp up your clotho protein, and would make your brain more resilient, would make you more motivated, and would make you more kind of feeling filled inside. One other thing I'd like to suggest in terms of enthusiasm and treating your own failures and approaching them, and this is universally applicable to running YouTube or social media when you're struggling with getting subs and views and you're concerned about that, with building business or expanding business, or with changing your habits. What I found for myself is that as soon as I stop thinking about the opinion of other people about my work, this is when I become really relaxed. So when I stop thinking about how many people are going to subscribe, how many people are going to watch the video, if I see the value in what I do, if I have the message that I think is worth delivering to the people, then that's what I'm doing. If somebody is unwilling to watch that, somebody dislikes that, that's their opinion. My message then is not for them. And so this is not my problem. This is just a circumstance, a situation, an observation. So stop thinking about the opinion. Stop thinking about the immediate gains. If we are talking long-term endeavors, it is actually doing the doing without thinking about the result and the immediate reward that actually does the trick. And I've recently posted a reel on Instagram about this exact thing, that there was a time when I was watching my YouTube subscribers and views and everything, and I was really obsessed about that. And then I figured out that no, I'm not going to do that, because as I said, I know what I'm doing is worthwhile. I find it worthwhile for myself. And even if I was the only person who would find that worthwhile, it still counts. But there are other people who are watching, who are giving me feedback, so that's good. Somebody needs that. And screening for the feedback from people constantly is amazingly draining. It's always in the background, and it suppresses your creative potential, and it makes you attached to these numbers, to these metrics, and makes you very, very tense. So I've stopped doing that at some point, and I felt very, very relaxed. I just kept doing, I'm doing the video, a new video here. I have something to say to the people, and so I continued. So bottom line is, there will be peaks and dips. But if you know that what you're doing is worthwhile and right, you can just transcend them. And you then become independent of the opinions of others. You then become independent of your own failures. And even more so, you become independent of your own success. Because if you start celebrating success and expecting more and more, then if that doesn't happen, if that trajectory flattens out or goes down, then again, you're deflated. If you don't want to be deflated, don't get inflated, just transcend and keep moving. I hope you find these insights helpful. Leave me a comment below on what topic you would like the next lifestyle mix, and we'll get all that covered. And I see you again soon in the next video.